My name's Morgan Poliquin. I'm president of Almadex Minerals, and we're an exploration company working in the western United States, and we're focused on copper gold porphyries.
Morgan, good to see you again. I guess we could just kind of end your roundup, but also maybe look forward. Okay, this is a U.S. company now, and I want to understand what that means for you. But how would you summarize 2024?
It was a really important inflection year for us. We assembled a portfolio of early stage projects that represent opportunities to discover copper gold porphyries in the western U.S. Over the last few years, we've been kind of challenged where our 25 past years has been focused on in Mexico. And we've used the exploration techniques that are big in scope and scale and ideas and put that into use in the western U.S. So we've got projects in Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico. And so the year was spent assembling this portfolio through, all the way from generative work to field work to bring these projects up to a place where we can get ready to drill them.
If you don't mind, let's kind of focus on that thought, that idea that you've had. We're seeing a lot of kind of adversarial type headlines out there. The geopolitics of mining, and is clear for all. We also talk about critical mineral lists and critical mineral security, and all of these kind of aggressive posturing type things, and China putting blocks in place for exports, and the U.S. putting, talk of a lot of tariffs on board. How does that backdrop change the way that you come at junior exploration?
I think it's obviously geology is number one. Arguably, the best place to look for porphyry deposits would be Iran. And I don't have the political or capacity to take that on for obvious reasons. So I really think that it should be the number one layer before you should look at a world map if you're going to start a junior exploration company and decide where you think the next 10 years would be the least amount of risk, because that's the time frame that we're looking in, particularly with generative exploration work. And then obviously is the component where that geology aligns with that. I think the Western U.S., nobody knows what could happen politically. In the last election, the group that lost was talking about potentially looking at the mining law and making some changes. And there's no guarantees that the new administration coming in will with anything these days. But the geopolitical situation is acute. And my experience in what I consider to be in North America, which is always been our focus, is staying close to that political center of the United States and that stability in Canada and Mexico. I think we've discovered that even in that kind of political area, you can have extreme instability. So I think what we've decided to do is get closer to the heart of that political of the West, and we think at the same time the geological permissivity is huge. There's tremendous things that haven't been done in terms of exploration. So we're based in Vancouver. If I wanted to, I can drive to my projects in a couple of days. It's pretty nice.
Okay, so we'll step away from the geopolitics of it, which I just think is quite fascinating. Certainly with regards when it's battery metals, specifically, you're chasing copper and gold. So there's the battery metal component there, but also the precious metal market has resurged in 2024. Also, very, very appealing. So let's talk about the plan then. You're going for what? Who are you? So what are you chasing?
Specifically, I'm looking at copper gold porphyries, but there's other things you might find around copper gold porphyries. They're basically a nexus of mineral deposits that form in concert together. So you've got call it a volcano. And this is the way I like to present it. We're sort of chasing old volcanoes. So deeper in the volcano, you'll find the copper and gold, and higher up, often gold only, maybe with silver. And so you're chasing that environment. What we did in Mexico for 25 years was fairly unique. I did my PhD on it, and so one can go and read about it. But what we did was we looked at we found some new belts of volcanoes, and of course they're not new; they're very old, but they're newly recognized, and we call it interpolated and extrapolated along a line. And there's a specific age that we discovered was associated with metal deposition. And that's the same around the world. The Andes, are long-lived, tens of millions of years, but there's very specific ages, maybe less than 1% of the time frame that built the Andes is associated with a copper porphyry deposit. So we've found that age, and then what we did is we looked for the expression of the porphyry deposit. So they put out an enormous amount of fluid and changed the rock above and around them over kilometers, tens of kilometers, to clay minerals. And so we're able to identify those clay minerals from space. And once we have the line that I described, then we find these piles of clay, and then we have unique capacity to interpret it. And what we found is that around the world, the last 20 years, 30 years, is that these piles of clay, if they're not deeply eroded, can be obscuring enormous deposits of copper and gold. For example, Vale, just a few years ago, discovered in Indonesia a fairly well-explored one of these belts. I'm just looking here. It's over 1 billion tons of 1% copper, and in an indicated resource at 2 billion. So it's 2 to 3 billion tons. It's enormous, and it was a blind discovery. So we feel that there are belts of porphyries where they aren't deeply eroded. Most of the porphyries in the world were discovered where you've eroded down through that clay to the copper and gold. And if you can identify those belts and the the clay above them, and you have the wherewithal to be able to drill through that, you can still make big discoveries. And I believe that's where the future of discovery is going to be, simply because you got to go to Iran if you want to find a deposit that's exposed at the surface now. So we have the techniques to do that, and we did it. We found 3 deposits in that manner. So I brought that methodology to the United States, and we're very pleased to have been able to identify these piles of clay, which incidentally the technical term for that is lithocap. We've identified these belts and where they go. We've done our own, it was fairly unusual for a junior company, we've done our own age dating, our own age determinations, argon, and uranium, lead, and our techniques that we use. And I've done argon dating to figure out where these belts go. And so lo and behold, here's these piles of clay that I don't believe were ever recognized as porphyry lithocaps. We've been able to stake them outright, which is also fairly unusual. We don't have to option them. And so, yeah, the next stage is to go and develop these. We've got some of them have brought along to the stage in which we can make drill decisions. Others need more work, and that will be the focus of this year.
Right. Okay. So, we're after porphyries, epithermals, but small company, 10 million market cap. You've been hit hard, like a lot of exploration companies over the past 2-3 years, and you've had your challenges during that time. This is good talk, but how do you finance this thing?
There's 2 aspects to it. You've got to do the surface work, which we can do, and it's fairly inexpensive. But then you've got to drill. There's only one way that we call the drill the truth machine. Now, luckily, we've got we've got 13.2 million at the end, which is the number at the end of the third quarter. We've got working capital above that. We've got about $1 million in other equities. We've got other assets that we can speak to as well. So we're essentially trading below cash, and we've got diamond drills. So one of the things I did the last few years, 20 years, is recognizing that especially if you're doing generative work from scratch, you're taking projects from the earliest possible stage, from the identification stage. Drilling is the most expensive. If you measure odds with expense, it's the highest risk stage of the exploration process by far. Initial first pass drilling. So we got our own diamond drills, and we trained up a diamond drilling team, and we brought all those drills up to the United States, and we have a crew in the United States. So we're able to effect early stage, low cost first pass drilling on our own. We don't have infinite resources. but we have the capacity to do that kind of work. And we also do other things ourselves. We have our own geophysical equipment. We're able to do our own IP surveys. So we can dramatically reduce the cost of that first pass drilling. Historically, people will know us as a prospect generator, which essentially means that we've had many different partnerships over the years with major companies, junior companies. And as I flesh these properties out, we'll certainly look at whatever opportunities may present themselves, but we do have the capacity to do some of the first pass testing ourselves.
Okay, so I want to be clear when you say you've got diamond drills, you own the diamond drills, and the net effect is what? The drilling is cheaper for you, is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. Not only is it cheaper, you can also do unusual things. You can decide that you're going to drill one hole and wait on assay results. You don't have to engage in a large contractual arrangement that might not allow for such consideration. So you can be far more entrepreneurial about your exploration. And again, the critical stage, we made a discovery once with a one-hole condemnation program, and it was the discovery hole of the program. So it doesn't always work that way. In fact, it's not likely to. But when you're testing a concept, that's an early stage concept, the ability to put a hole in and characterize the geology in 3 dimensions and get a sense for what you're dealing with can allow you to, perhaps you don't hit a home run like we did in the past, but it will allow you to maybe form that joint venture as you've been able to demonstrate or confirm the concept. So that's what, it's not only just the cost, which is tremendous, to be able to reduce that, but it's also flexibility.
Right, okay, understood. And you're right, it's not just about cost, because these are big projects, and it was kind of something kind of where my brain was going to when you were talking. It's like, if you're talking about porphyries, people would go, crikey. We've seen companies absolutely destroy themselves by raising cash after cash after cash, chasing these big kind of porphyry targets, because if they hit, they're huge. But there's a heck of a lot of holes got to go into these things. So again, I appreciate you've got, as of last quarter, 13 odd million bucks, and you got cheaper drilling and lots of other things that you can be doing here, but you're going to need to at some stage partner up. I know you have, as a prospect generator, been able to kind of get people in, but that's a very different model to what you're suggesting here. So what does it look like with the kind of 3 targets that you've got at the moment and in 2025?
Yeah, so we've been staking, and we've announced in text form what we've been doing in our news releases, and we want to be a lot more explicit about it. We basically have I'm going to say we've got a larger portfolio than this of things that are moving along, but some of these things might be dropped. But we've got 6 key projects that are porphyry lithocaps, and what we've been able to do is so far is map and do the soils. We've got a machine. It's quite an expensive field machine, but it's able to characterize the minerals and map them out and zone them. And it's very important because you know where you are in the system. All this work is fairly inexpensive, but it's critical to define the targets. So I would expect this year that by the middle of the year, we'll be very clear on these projects. We'll be describing them, and we'll be defining them with respect to the drill targets that are there. I'm very hopeful that the fact that we have clarity politically perhaps in the United States for the next 4 years after quite a chaotic period of deciding upon that, that combined, it's uncertainty that creates terror, and a little bit of certainty is a good thing, particularly in our sector. And the fact that we're in the Western U.S. and the fact that these are very accessible, we're not at 5,000 meters in the Andes. We're not on an Indonesian archipelago somewhere very remote in the jungle. So these are accessible, and I think the plan will be to drill 1 or 2 of them ourselves this year, but we'd certainly like to be working on the portfolio with partners, and that'll be a focus for us to basically come out with what we've been doing. We've just staked them, we've just done preliminary work, but we're very excited about them, and I think we'll be able to demonstrate with the data that we've gathered the potential of these things very soon.
Okay, so we've seen a few companies kind of change their models over the last couple of years. They needed to adapt to kind of market pressures, also access capital to keep the projects moving and be able to tell a growth story. So again, I just want to be clear about how you see this going forward. So it's beyond prospect generation, but at the same time, it's a JV model. Will you retain or try to retain any of these projects 100% on your own? For those where you've JV, do you expect to be the operator for a period of time, or are you looking to kind of spin these things out and retain some sort of carried interest? I mean, what does it look like?
I think all of the above. We've done all of the above. I mean, I've had agreements with majors. I've had investments by majors in our stable of companies, which spun out of Almadex. We made a porphyry copper discovery in Mexico, and Newcrest and now Newmont came in for a 20% interest. We've done it in a variety of ways. I think the key for us is we have more projects than we can test ourselves. You never know. I mean, you might have one with a great anomaly, and it's the one without the great anomaly where the discovery is made. And keep in mind that we're dealing with high-level alteration as described, which may be fairly barren at surface. So it's hard to judge initially. A lot of people think, well, you've dealt this one. Does that mean you didn't like it, or and majors have, for example, if you were to do a deal with a major, they have a different criteria. I think we have the kind of portfolio, and we're in the kind of time, and we're in the location where I expect to have a great deal of interest in this portfolio, and I can tell you that I've received interest in the portfolio, and I feel very confident that we'll be able to advance it, certainly ourselves, on the preliminary necessary field work. We can do our own geophysics, which greatly enhances the three-dimensional view of a project and its potential. But ultimately, it's the drilling that will advance this portfolio. And I feel confident we'll be able to do that combination with our own drills and with partners over the next couple of years. And that's the goal. And we're ongoing as our generative work. We're not just resting on this portfolio. The concept is I'm keeping a little bit under my chest, as I did with our work in Mexico over the years. And we feel like we're onto a continental scale geological model that we'll continue to chase.
Okay, got to explain to people, again, the type of investment they're looking at here, because it kind of feels like you're chasing big projects, but it's a kind of slow burn in terms of where you are or where those projects are. In terms of the JV partners that come in, you've got to agree how you get after these projects, and like say, who operates it, in the terms of what that JV looks like, and at what point are you carried through to, and what financial burden is it to you up until what point, et cetera, right? So there's a lot of ifs and buts in there, but these things do take a longer time. Can you give an example of like how a project like an asset specifically like this has been either vended out or vended into someone else's operation, or you've done a JV, and in terms of what those economics look like? Because I don't mind if I'm going in with an expectation that we're going to see some amazing result within 6 months, and actually this is a kind of five-year project, I'm going to be disappointed. So I want you to be kind of clear with people the type of investment that this is. Yeah,
well, as I mentioned, we've got 6 of these projects. We'd like to systematically drill them, and we'd like to start this year. And so last year we put a hole into one of our projects, and we confirmed that there's a porphyry underneath. We did not hit a home run, but I think we've got that project to the stage where it's interesting. We've confirmed the model. So the challenge with exploration is obviously it might not be there. The odds are very long. We all know that. I think that's a threshold everyone has to breach when they get into looking at this sector. But the next stage is, how are you going to ensure that you test, if people agree with the ideas, how are you going to ensure that you're going to test them? And what we're going to do is, I haven't defined which ones yet, but there's a couple that I have in mind that I'd like to drill ourselves this year, 1 or 2. And I think over the first quarter, right now it's there's not a lot of work going on with snow in certain areas on our projects. So there's a seasonal effect, and I'm expecting that we'll be able to flesh out interest in our portfolio over the next little while. So I can't guarantee that we're going to be doing, I haven't announced, nor do I have anything in the works that I'm about to announce, to be clear, any JVs. But, we've done many of them, tens of them in the past. And I think we're able to convey it's not something we haven't done before, work with majors or bigger companies or even many juniors. And I think what we're seeing now is, despite the markets and how difficult they've been, we're starting to see a little change in that. And I think there's a little bit more confidence in this sector and a little increasing recognition of its necessity. And the fact that we're in the United States and the fact that we have a verifiable portfolio of copper gold targets, which are real, I think we're going to have interest in it to be able to create more flexibility. But the plan this year is to drill, as it will be every year, is to drill one or two ourselves. And we know we have the capacity to do that. We can't keep our drill busy 12 months of the year unless we've made a discovery. It's not the way it works. But so what we've done in the past is we've leased our drill out to third parties. And so it's something that can actually mitigate. We've had cash flow positive years. In fact, one year I think we made $5 million out of our drilling operations. I'm not saying we're going to do that. But we have a balanced approach, and we're shooting for the stars. Americans say we're swinging for the fence. Cricket terms, it's a 6, I guess. And porphyries are the biggest prize that there is in the exploration world. To discover a metal endowment of that scale, we know that we have porphyry systems that we've identified. They need to be drilled at depth because they aren't exposed at surface. But we've already constrained what we're looking for to something enormous. And it's a function of going for it. So the odds are always long. It could be faulted away. It could be too low grade, too deep. I mean, we know all that. But we've already constrained ourselves to the box of we're looking for something enormous. And we've found that we are dealing with that type of thing. And so now let's go and get either ourselves or others to drill it and try to confirm it.
Okay, so I always kind of want to hone in on the kind of commerciality of this. Like the model you're describing is obviously it's not a new one. You've done it before. Lots of people do it. It's a means of accessing bigger balance sheets and more capital to get after the drilling. Because I got to ask you the question, Jay. How do you value these sorts of deals? I'm not talking about the company specifically, because the company will benefit from a collection of these types of deals being put together, and at different points they will create value, which is a very generic phrase, I know, but it's important for you to be able to articulate to potential shareholders, like, where do these moments come? Is it just purely through the drill bit, whoever's paying for it, or the speed at which a partner potentially wants to move through this? Because porphyries they're big prizes, but they take a long time in the making, and I haven't got the stomach for a sort of 20-year process here. So during a 20-year process, what are the moments where value gets generated, created, or perception becomes reality?
Well, I think we've been very successful being a junior partner, the non-operator junior partner. That's happened for us before. So in the case of the El Cobre porphyry in Mexico, it was different. We drilled the initial hole ourselves internally with our own drill, and we hit the discovery hole after several years of drilling, with lots of smoke and lots of reasons to keep drilling and some excitement, I might add. We hit this hole that brought in a major investor. And so that's one model.
But in that case, how did everyone win from that? You brought in a big partner. They did what? And what did that mean for, I don't know, share price? What did it mean for, this value creation equation, which I'm trying to understand?
Yeah, well, I think in that case, there were there was geopolitical complications and other things that got in the way. So the end game never probably manifested itself. That project sequestered in geopolitical matters. I would call it in Mexico, but I think that was we brought in an $18 million investment at roughly $100 million valuation to do the next stage of drilling.
Okay. Without
And
the AMLO component there, that could have and should have gone on to be something better.
yeah, no, I believe so very much. We put out an initial resource, and unfortunately in 2020, so that project, for a variety of different timing and geopolitical reasons, was unable to manifest itself. But that all being said, the discovery was made by ourselves, and we were able to bring in the larger investment, which mitigated the risk for shareholders. Not the ending anybody wanted there. But another model is, I recall, on a nearby property, also in Mexico, we had then Canadian Gold Hunter, which was one of the companies that made up NGEX, a lending partner, and it was a 70-30 deal. We were a junior partner, and they drilled the project to resource point, and from very preliminary means, and our stock did extremely well as a junior partner, carried along with no operatorship requirements or burdens of that nature. So I've been on both sides of it. Quite frankly, this company is not interested in getting into a development proposition, worried about water resources, environmental permitting, unions, and the like. So I think our job is here from really nothing, from conceptual work, to make initial discoveries and to capitalize on that. Our job is to provide a capital gain as soon as possible, and my experience is it comes from the drill bit. So you either mitigate the risk of the drill bit with a partner, or you mitigate it how we've done it, which is very rare to have your own internal drilling. But you're trying to keep your dilution as low as possible and maximize that exposure to that discovery drill hole. And obviously I don't know when that's gonna come, but
Okay.
that's what you're trying to do.
Okay, give me your definition of discovery, because most explorers go through their life, and I do mean most explorers go through life not having made a discovery. It's not easy. People think casually go, oh, they'll just make a discovery and then we'll take it from there. It's hard. So what's your definition of that? And with regards to the projects you talk about in terms of Paradise, New Hope, Radio, etc., are they actually discoveries?
Not at this stage. No, they're prospects.
Right. Okay. So what is it going to take to make a discovery, and how do you define discovery?
To me, a discovery is made with the drill hole. I mean, it could be at surface if you were able to trench, find a brand new vein that's sticking out. That's, prospectors used to, in the West or in Mexico, go and find veins on hills that nobody had sampled before, and that's unlikely to happen. So the most likely circumstance is that a discovery is made with a drill hole. Not by walking about and finding something sticking out of the ground. We don't expect that so much anymore. So a drill hole that would characterize, there's two things that make a mine. One is size and one is grade. So, Fruta del Norte is an incredible discovery that was made in Ecuador some 20 years ago, I'm guessing now. And they had both. I think it was 150 meters of 15 grams or something, or 30 grams, something spectacular. Well, there's no question that was a discovery. So there are degrees of that. If you were to hit a porphyry that had a long interval of 0.1 copper, which would be subeconomic, but you've found it in an area where there's no indication of a porphyry, Would that be a discovery? I think it would, particularly if it got the kind of partner, perhaps, or capacity involved to see if it's, something more. So what you're ultimately looking for is grade and tonnage together, or one or the other, as we know. So porphyries are large volumes of rock that are lower grade copper, demonstrating in one of these alteration zones that we believe are clearly associated with porphyry copper systems. Some copper would be a major step forward. It could be enough to generate a large exploration program because these things are quite rare. But obviously, you'd love to do the Fruto del Norte right off the bat, which we've done in the past as well.
Okay, let's lay out what's happening in 2025, because like I said, you've got money. Some people go a little bit crazy and they blow it, go big or go home. Others a bit more conservative and careful with it. I think in this market, I know what I prefer. How are you approaching 2025, given what you've just seen for the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's a risk on, and I guess from an investor point of view, I guess you call it a risk off environment, but this is a time of great uncertainty in the world. There's a lot of people thinking that the geopolitical risk that you outlined will become more and more acute. So being careful with your capital is very important. So it's a balance that we have to strike. We also believe that there's a window of opportunity, again, geopolitically, to explore in the United States and and we want to advance these properties in that time frame as aggressively as we possibly can. We believe that we have other assets in the company, potentially even things that could be, in theory, monetized. An example of that is we sold a royalty for over $10 million a few years back. I mentioned the drilling. So I feel like there is capacity to do things that aren't just going after the market for more capital. But that all being said, the money in the bank is the only friend you have. Our chairman, my father, always that's his line. And you've got to be judicious with it. But the goal here is to make a discovery. We're trading below cash, and there's good reason for that. We've been quietly assembling a brand new portfolio of what I consider to be high quality porphyry exploration targets in the best jurisdiction, I think, right now for political risk in the world. And I'm very pleased with that. But the next stage is to go and test them. And so what I'd like to do this year is drill at least one, much like we did last year, possibly two. We're hopeful that we'll be able to mitigate some of that initial high drilling risk with partnerships as well. So I can't guarantee that, but it's something I'm actively working on, and we have a great deal of experience in having done in the past. So I think this year people will also really understand what we've been able to put together in this portfolio. We'll be far more explicitly talking about the projects, the soil programs, the results. We've been quietly assembling them and also keeping our cards a little close to the chest as well. It's a very competitive environment out there to acquire things that can be staked. So I don't want people to know exactly what I'm doing just yet. But very soon we'll be explaining very explicitly of what we've done.
So it's going to become less and less competitive, I think, this year. A lot of cash-stranded companies out there, for sure. So you're in a rarefied air, lucky position at the moment, not having to go and raise cash. So look, Morgan, great to speak to you. I'm intrigued by this kind of version of the company and obviously the assets that you've got and what you're going to do with them, more importantly, this year. The model, I think people are starting to understand more broadly as more people do it. So look, please stay in touch. Let us know how you get on, okay?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity.